Yeah, but guess what? This is a different Tuesday. It's in a new year, 2019, the 8th day already. And we're thankful to the Most High God for life, for the grace to rise and to be together again on the Executive Lounge. Now, I know as individuals, we have all kinds of reviews we do and introspections at the end of the year, and we call it New Year resolutions and all of that. But there are certain things in life that without, no matter what you do, success will elude you. And they are principles. Some can call them formulas. They're the unshakable and unchangeable tenets and foundations on which anything worth building will be built. You're welcome to the Executive Lounge. My name is Inshira Ado, and my guest for the very first episode on radio this year is a man who's no stranger to the show. In fact, by far the only one who's appeared twice on the radio edition and has also been on the TV edition of the Executive Lounge. So, he's my foremost faculty member, Marek Kofigan. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Inshira.
Good to have you.
Good to be here. Always a pleasure.
It is for me as well, and really looking forward to our conversation. Now, so if you just tuned in, this is the Executive Lounge. My guest is Marek Kofigan. He's a chartered accountant. He's a development consultant. He is an author. The guy wears many hats, and he does them all very well. And so our conversation today, Marek, is really going to borrow from who you are and what you do, and how you're able to divvy up your day and life to achieve success in various different spheres of that very busy life. I don't take for granted that you've made time to be here, because there's a million and one things you could have been doing this afternoon. So we're really grateful to have you. I would like us to have a practical conversation. I mean,
Sure.
there's 24 hours for all of us.
Yep.
Yeah. Some of us are able to do one thing at a time.
Uh-huh.
Others do multiple things in that same 24 hours.
Yep.
And the beauty of life and working is that, so whether you hit your target for 2018 or not, it's going to go up this year.
Yep.
And one thing is almost certain, that you will have even a smaller budget to achieve that. And you have, so you're going to need to do more, but you have finite amount of time within which to do it, and possibly a little bit less resource than you normally would.
That's right.
How do you face something like this and smile and still go ahead and achieve success?
Well, I guess the first thing is to remember that, by the way, Happy New Year to all your cherished listeners.
Oh, yeah, and I didn't even say Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to yourself, Inshira.
Many happy returns.
So, I mean, I guess the easiest way to start that off is to remember that the things you talked about, it could be a million and one things, need to be done.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line. They need to be done. So it's no about whether you need to shed some off. Yes, you need to shed some off if you can. But the important thing is to start off knowing that some things need to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And then to start off trying to figure out how you can do them with the limited resources. And that goes for both on a personal level and on a business level as well.
Okay. We'll explore both.
Right.
And even look at it even from the home.
Right.
You know, on the personal front. I mean, there are people who have to balance keeping a family together, raising a family, and then still performing at work. It's 20 minutes past 1. This is the Executive Lounge, and this is going to be a super interactive conversation. I'd like for you, our audience, to get in touch via WhatsApp at 0244 340 437, or you can call 0302 216 541, and just, you know, throw your insights and questions that you might have about how you can remain focused in a world where there's so much happening around you. I'd like to start off from what I I watched this short video yesterday,
Okay.
and it was taking a very massive swipe at what social media is doing to us.
Right.
We're both active on social
Yes.
media. Um, some people tend to be too active on social media to the detriment of things that need to be done,
That's right.
because it is addictive.
Yes.
It's interesting, you connect with people more on social media nowadays
Than
than you
anywhere
actually get to
in
see them.
physical,
You know,
yes.
every single day of the year, the memory thing on Facebook would say, "Oh,
Yeah.
you've got memories with this person,"
Yeah.
and it kind of
That's
keeps
right,
you. So there's this interesting loop where you're interacting with people, and it's taking a lot of valuable time away from you.
destructive, yes.
How should a person or a business ensure that people have this ability to concentrate on getting the job done, living your life and doing the things that need to be done, but also that, you feed this addiction of yours?
Right. And there's a few things practically you could do. Certainly things that I do a lot. I'll start off with automation. You need to learn to automate. I think there's a lot of things you can automate. So a lot of people think I actually physically spend a lot of time on Facebook putting up posts. The truth is that ideas come to me all the time, and I scribble them down. There's no idea that comes to me that goes waste. So something I'll probably be posting 5 days from now at 12 p.m. in the afternoon is already written down somewhere. So I'm not going to sit down 3 days from now on social media and be thinking about what to post and then post it, and then, that is already automated. So I guess the idea is to try and automate some things. But then beyond that, there's also the need to learn to say no to yourself. And that takes a lot of discipline, but it's something you need to cultivate. There are times you need to get work done. Crucial that you make a living, the money comes through the door. So you need to find that time of the day that requires that you say no to yourself. So there are 3 times I post usually in a day. I post around between 6 a.m. and 7, not beyond 7:20. Because by 7:20 I'm at my desk.
Okay.
I would post again likely around 12, and I would post again around 5 p.m. Now, those times are chosen because that's when the traffic gets heaviest on social media. And so I psych myself that those are the times, 3 times in a day, that I have to do a post, and I'll do that. In between that, I have enough time to myself, and if I do want to work, I will work. If I do have to have meetings, I will have meetings. So that's largely also part of the automation process. You're able to say no to the times in between and be able to get some work done. The addiction thing, I think largely is a discipline thing. I think people need to learn to be disciplined that, social media doesn't feed you. Unless, of course, you're using it for marketing purposes. Other than that, it doesn't feed you.
Yeah.
Yes, you establish connections, you establish leverages, personal leverages, and you can take them outside of Facebook or social media to work on those. But, you need to bear in mind social media doesn't feed you. And if you can get that in your head, then, you'll be able to say no when you do need to say no.
Interesting. So you need to learn the tools and make sure that you're automating, because it frees up time for you to focus on the things that you need to do. So you're present, but you're not losing time.
Yes, that's the idea. That largely is that.
I like that.
And that can translate into anything, even outside of social media. You need to know how to position yourself at certain times of the day. That's really what it is.
So, I mean, in this interesting world where things are rapidly evolving, technology is enhancing life, depending on how you choose to look at it. And that there are tools that allow you to get a lot of things done. And I think that, the idea of automation, being able to still manage what would have otherwise been a distraction, in a way that complements what you do. Are there other ways in which you'd say, okay, so I get into work, there are meetings, and there's also elements of teamwork that probably may be distracting because
Right.
we all are
Yeah, yeah,
different in our temperament and everything. There's some people who would like to be, even if you gave them a 1 square, meter space, for as long as they are on their own, they'll be more efficient.
Right.
And then there are others who
Need to
would
be.
be happy
Yeah.
working in an environment where there are other people
Right.
and can manage that. What would you say would be the things that we ought to do, right from those who don't mind being in a space where there are lots of different people and there are little distractions, and then for those who have difficulty working in spaces where there's all these distractions but must be there because that's the space they've been given to work in?
Right. Are we looking at it from the point of view of you being a manager of those persons, or just being a
No,
member of the team?
whether a manager or a team member, your individual effort contributes to the team goals.
Right.
So let's strip the title of it, but
Right,
as a
okay.
person contributing to corporate goals.
Right. Okay. Okay. So there's communication. Okay. Now, most people think communication is all about knowing how to talk. Communication is also knowing your environment and then how to communicate within that environment. So it involves knowing the people you are with and what works for them, and therefore how to deal with them. So there's a bit of emotional intelligence that comes in there. Which is largely not so much of emotional intelligence, but largely understanding the environment in which you need to communicate to people or relate to people in.
Okay.
So, as an individual working in an environment, a corporate environment, there really, it's not one of those things that gets written in your job description, but it's one of those things that will make you efficient in carrying out or delivering your job description. Which means that if I'm working with you, I need to know what makes you function most. You function being alone or secluded, or do you function being in a space that you can deal with noise? That then means that if I need to communicate with you in any way, you rightly said earlier, there's some people who function with all the noise and they don't mind because, they're just that nature of personality. So I can come to you in the working space in an open office and still have a discussion, a fruitful meeting with you with all the noise around, and you will still get my point of view or get the message as to what I'm trying to get us to do. Somebody else would require that I pull them out into a private meeting room and have a tete-a-tete, because that's the language of communication they understand. Everything else around them will be a distraction. So I think it's one of those personal duties that you take on yourself because you do want to be efficient. And when you learn communication, even on a wider scope, even how you actually, fine, we've taken the person to a private room. How I actually communicate with the person is also something to learn in itself, because there's ways I can say something to you that will make you get it. There's ways I can say something to somebody else that won't make them get it. And so you need to be aware of those. So I guess the answer to your question is, to work in that kind of space, you need to know who functions best how, and who functions best where. Because it's a place you need to know what works for whoever in that space. That is not to say that people don't need to adapt. I think adaptation is a skill that is increasingly becoming crucial, that we all need to get. Is that you always wouldn't find yourself in the perfect circumstance in which you want to operate. So you need to learn to adapt. So there's all this what we call soft skills that we need to continually keep developing. Like I said, they are not things that will show up in your job description, but they are things that will make you efficient at work.
Wonderful stuff. So, when you talked about adaptability, just took me back to, I think, a document that the core things that you ought to know. I think the World Economic Forum put them out. That
one of them is adaptability.
Yeah, that these are things you need to if you're going to survive in this,
Yeah.
the future of work, you
Yeah.
need these things.
That's right.
And a lot of things are happening very quickly.
That's
you
right.
know. So what it means is that businesses or environments that hitherto where your regular mundane jobs are becoming high octane jobs because there's so much
To do.
change happening.
Yeah.
What that means is that people might get yanked from one environment of work or schedule of work and asked to do something else.
Yes.
Is there a special thing one must do to cultivate adaptability so that you're able to function well? Because when you move people around, I mean, if you look around on the football field,
Yeah.
there's some players that pretty much can play everywhere, and some, a slight variation to their role completely
send them
messes
out,
them up.
yeah.
But it doesn't make them bad players.
Yes.
So
Just makes them dysfunctional.
exactly.
Right.
Is there something that the player ought to do or the manager ought to do? How do you find the balance?
I think it's largely the player who needs to learn to adapt. I mean, not obviously in the football because that's a formation kind of game, but more and more in the workplace, people are being required to be multi-sensitive, multitasking, multi-knowledgeable. Multi-knowledgeable is easy because you can learn around and know the various things that will make you be able to adjust to various things that are happening around you. So that's easy. Being multidisciplinary gets a bit difficult because that is, you're now calling on people's individual natures, their dispositions. So that's a bit difficult. There is no hard and fast rule when we teach people soft skills as to how to be adaptable. I think it's one of those skills that Nike works best. Just do it. You have to learn to do it before you can ever know to do it. I think it's one of those skills that it's not taught. Adaptability is one of those things that you have to do it to be able to learn to do it. What it does mean, however, is that people need to learn to become uncomfortable in little doses. So today you might be asked, so you're on the show today. Today you might be asked, could you produce something? It might not be one of the things you enjoy doing, but in order to get not acceptance, but in order to be more functional within the organization, you need to learn to do other things. Because these days, see, the whole idea these days about efficiency is, you remember we once had I think it's the Black Starlets team that the coach played a system called
The 1995 team, multi-system.
Multi-system.
The late Samadi.
Right, Samadi, that's correct. So literally everybody knew how to do a little bit of everything. Right. That's the future of work environment. So yes, you might be a specialist in a certain area, but even knowledge-wise, you might have a degree in something, but you're expected to know more than just your degree. You're expected to know a lot more than your degree. In terms of functionality, you might be able to function best in a particular role, but you'll be required to learn more. I mean, when I started working in development, for example, I started off as an accountant. I ended up, like today, I even lecture in monitoring and evaluation at public sector level because you're required to master some of these things. So, you do need to be able to expand your capabilities. Right. But it's only a good thing because you become a better person in that regard. So just do it is the trick. Really.
Let's jump into this. It's becoming an increasingly interesting conversation around whether specialist is the way to go or being a generalist is the way to go, and some arguments support that. Support both. Yeah. But the classical knowledge has been that specialization was the best way to lead to efficiency.
Right.
But now it seems that, it's okay to be a specialist, but you've got to have to start keeping an eye on a bigger picture, and things like that.
Yes. Yes.
How do you keep focus? I'd like us to explore the power of focus.
Okay.
How do you keep focus? How do you keep your fingers on the pulse to know that, okay, in this big picture of this general space that I've mastered a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that,
right?
How do I narrow down to the payload that makes the difference?
Okay. Can I say this in two ways? From a business perspective, not as individuals, from an organizational perspective. I interestingly have worked for organizations. I remember in two organizations I've worked for, there was one year where we were having a strategy meeting where the directors had to say, you know what, stop. I think we're doing too many things at the same time. And therefore, there had to be a retract to say, you know what, we want to do what we were set out to do. So from an organizational perspective, I think it's becoming more and more crucial to still be a specialist organization, but keep an eye on opportunities. And there's a reason why I say keep an eye out for opportunities. So here's the thing. There's increasingly many companies doing the same thing or different things. So you can't, in the business space, afford to be too much of a generalist because you spread yourself too thin.
Okay.
You get faced with too much competition from all the various players playing in the generalist pool. But consumers are also becoming very fragmented. In other words, they're becoming almost specialist consumers. I'll give you an example. Even basic music. There's Beam Nation and there's Shatter Movement.
That's right.
Okay, right. That's the easiest example I can, flip out there. But it tells you people are becoming tribes rather than just give us anything and we'll consume. So the era of mass consumption is literally phasing out. Now, for these two reasons, businesses are better placed to sort of try and create their own tribes, and that means also specializing in what they do best. And the easiest way to do that is for businesses to keep an eye on why we were set up in the first place. You always need to keep an eye on that. The tendency for most businesses is because you want to expand, you want to grow. They grow into doing different things, but that's growing horizontally. You can grow and still maintain a focus, but it means you need to grow vertically, which means keep your core ideals, keep your core services, keep your core products, and then you can expand those products purely on the basis of what consumers want extra from those products, not entirely new ranges of products and all that. Because once you go horizontal, you're going to face a lot more competition. You're going to have to face a lot more competition. You're going to have to face a lot more complexities of different markets. You're going to face a lot more complexities of geographies that you're going to be selling in. So there's that complexity. So for businesses, keep the focus on why you originally set out to be a business. And then you can expand based on what customers want more out of your product. For individuals, as an individual, how to focus? I think it's an interesting question because for individuals, I think it largely comes down to two things for me, Shura. Keeping a focus on it largely comes down to one, being able to manage your time, and two, being able to learn how to prioritize. Now, both of them are actually very simple if you just be disciplined enough to stick to a few rules. If you take, say, for example, prioritizing, it's quite straightforward. You've got a lot to do.
But is it straightforward, though?
It is.
I mean, you've got lots to do, right?
I think you've got lots to do.
You start the day with a list.
So you start a day with a list. The easiest question or the easiest way to do it is to ask the question, what is important and what is it's about whether something is important and whether it's pressing enough. It's on that grid. Okay. Now, some things might be very pressing, but not important. Okay. They might be pressing, but not important. For those, you try and delegate. Some things might be important and pressing. You do those immediately. Some things might be not pressing, pressing, but not important. For those you, so if it's pressing but not important, you set a time for them to get it done. You set a time for them to get it because it's not pressing, but it's important that you get it done. So you set a time in the future of the day to say, you know what, when it's 11, I'll get this done, and make sure you stick to it. So it's this little hacks, life hacks that you play around with that make it possible for you to do things, even though you've got limited time, even though you've got limited space. So that's prioritization. Time management, there's a few things you can do, right? So if you take time management, for example, what I say to people, a more practical thing I say to people is, look, I have a 3-minute rule. If something's going to take me just 3 minutes to do, I'll get it done immediately, because then there's no need delaying it. Yeah. If it's just 3 minutes, 3 minutes gets wasted easily. So if it's going to take me 3 minutes, I'll do it. Then there's other practical things like you set a time in the day where you get certain things done. There are times in the day I probably would never be on Facebook or on social media or pick up calls because I'm probably on a Skype to another country or I'm having a conversation elsewhere. So there are certain times that are fixed. You won't get me. I work at night as well. I work very late because I need to get in touch with people in the U.S. and other places. So
you're global.
I'm quite like that, yeah. So you need to set times in the day where only certain things get done and block. And once people get to know that those times are out of bounds for certain things, people line up because you make them line up. Then there's also basic things you can do, like consolidating your activities. There are some activities that you can put together and get done at once. Okay, so I'm here at Joy FM. I hardly go out into town unless I have to. Because I'm coming to Joy FM, there's 5 other things I'm going to do after this.
Because I'm in town. Proximity,
yes.
Okay.
Yes, because I'm in town, I might as well get them done rather than come every day to get one done. So it's about consolidating. So there are little life hacks, we call them, that you can engage in. And then, of course, even with that, I said something earlier, which is learn to say no. I think that's one thing Ghanaians don't do enough. We usually don't say no.
We don't like hurting people's feelings.
But you need to learn to say no. There are sometimes you need to say no. And then, of course, if you can automate some things, you automate some things. For example, my gardener, I don't need to call my gardener every month. He knows to come on the last Wednesday or the last Thursday of every week and get a job done. I don't need to call my mechanic because he knows to come at a certain point every month to get my car service. So there's little things you can automate, and it frees you up. And the same applies to parents, for example. There are certain things about your kids you can learn to automate, and it frees up time. You might think, yes, we don't have time. Nobody has the time, but you need to, which is what we say, you need to create the time. So you can create time if you're creative about it.
I like that. So it's 43 minutes past 1. This is the Executive Lounge and coming to you live on Joy 99.7 FM. We're also live on Facebook. .com/Joy 99.7 FM. My guest is Marek Kofi Gan. Now, we're trying to set our scopes right for what lies ahead of us in 2019. And one of the key things that we've learned so far is that, you must cultivate discipline and you must learn to automate some of the things that you must do. It frees up time, allows you to do other things. And adaptability is a very, very key thing. Whatever environment you find yourself in, whichever environment you operate in, it's important that you're able to understand the space and the people within it, and so that you can get the best out of them and they can also get the best out of you. And we've explored, the concept of being, the specialist and the generalist, and it seems that whether you're a specialist in one area or not, you're still going to need to have a finger on the pulse on the bigger picture. So it helps to acquire knowledge about a lot more than what you are a specialist in, and do the things that matter. and create a grid, create a
Yeah.
grid of pressing, important, not so important. Like when you're sending emails and the urgency levels,
Yes,
you got
yes,
your
of
code
course.
red, orange, and
Yeah.
green, and you must go through life like that.
Like that, yeah.
Exactly. All right. It's days like this that I hate that this show is only 1 hour or less. We only have 15 more minutes to go. I'd like us to zone into the home.
Okay.
Um, Let me give you two
Scenario.
scenarios,
Right.
both of which you're very aware of. That there's a certain predictability about what the school run will be like.
Right.
Okay, in the UK,
Right.
your bus times, your train times,
Right.
unless there's some crazy act of God.
Yes.
9 out of 10 times, it will take you 40 minutes to do A, B, and C.
That's right.
So there's a certain
Certainty about
it.
Yes.
Here, well, you don't know if some truckload of charcoal will break down
On the way.
on the way or right
Stop
in front of your
everybody
house,
else,
so you
yeah.
can't get out. And there are all kinds of things, and you've got to deal with the traffic situation
Right.
and all of these things.
Right.
Now, how do you navigate and keep focus in an environment where there's so many potential external things that not distract but destabilizes your mindset?
Wow. I'll tell you one thing I find out about where I live. If I leave the house 5 minutes past 7 o'clock, I might as well not go out.
Mm.
Yes. I've done it so many times, now I know. Anything past 5 minutes after 7, you get locked down. So I guess the point I'm going to try and make is that you're right. When there are externalities, you really can't do much about them. But if you have been through, so here's my principle. If I've been through one external misdirection once, that is enough to learn to plan for future ones. So it becomes, so every external thing that happens that moves me off my grid becomes a learning tool to sort of create a system that ensures that even if it happens again, I'm mitigated.
Right.
So you might have a few, externalities that come your way that shift you off the grid you planned out for yourself. But it also means that it makes you be able to plan your time better in the future, because suddenly you also have a contingency plan. It's when these things happen and you don't, as a result, build a contingency plan that it becomes. So if I'm going out to work tonight, this morning, and I realize because there's a little car that tripped on the road, I'm late by 1 hour. Then I also have to start thinking not just about my work schedule the following day. I also have to start thinking about the kids' school drop, if my kids were here. So I guess the idea is, and applies to, basically everything, whether it's in business or in public sector or anywhere. Once an externality comes in play, the trick is to learn from it. And the trick is to adapt a new way of getting things done if that externality does show up, or if anything like that externality that shows up again. And it goes back to what we said earlier. That right there, that example right there, is a very, very practically typical example of adaptability. Because you adapt. It happens, yes, you accept it, and then you adapt. The adaptation might not kick in immediately. It might kick in the future, but you adapt nonetheless, because you're ready for the next time it happens. That's adaptability.
So it's important to take things as they come, but more importantly,
Yes,
that you learn
to
quickly
learn
from them.
it. But not just learn. Once you learn, you need to figure out the way to deal with it the next time it happens. Because the first time it happened, you weren't ready.
Yeah.
You probably would never be ready for some of these things. But once it happens, you must not meet it again and not be ready for it. That's non-adaptability.
Okay. So business businesses typically start out as ideas,
Yes.
and then there's a meeting point with
Yes.
people.
That's correct.
So the business has its aspirations, and the individuals have their own.
Yes.
And so, as the business aspires to greater heights, individuals are also aspiring to greater heights as well.
Their
for
needs
personal
change.
fulfillment,
Right.
the needs will change.
Yes.
How do you, for example, combine an outlook for a year that's going to be,
Right.
difficult?
Right.
There's going to be a lot more work needed from everyone. And you have personal aspirations, maybe whether you're wanting a certification in something, you want to build some new skills, you want to maybe even pick up a new hobby. How do you combine all of these things? Practically, if you, Mike, for example, decided you wanted to pick up the guitar this year, how would you go about it?
It means you need to create space in your time schedule. That's a fact. But the way I see life is, so each of those new things you want to do or that happen without you wanting them to happen is actually an opportunity that comes up. If you're a business, the demographics change, your customers change. The changes in those customers is actually an opportunity to create a new product or to expand the nature of your old product to meet those new demands. So there can be opportunities. But in terms of trying to bring in new ideas, new opportunities on board, the very fundamental thing to do is to free up what's not working. And I think you started the program by saying resolutions and all that. I think that's the first thing to do, not necessarily the resolutions themselves, is to always find out what hasn't worked last year and does not have the chance of working this year and to take them out. More often than not, businesses and individuals tend to leave things on the drawing board that have outlived their existence or that are no more useful for them going forward. And I think whatever you call it, whether it's New Year resolution or strategy days at the beginning of the year, whatever, the first thing you always do is to ask yourself what didn't work last year and does not have the likelihood of working this year. They need to get out. It's the only way you start to create space. And it's only when you start creating those space that you can ask yourself, what are the new things that need to come on board that will move us forward? So I would love to play a guitar. I would love that. Might help me serenade a woman at some point. but at at this point, the first question I'm going to ask myself is, what is the learning of a guitar going to add to me? For me, it's always about value. Whatever you do, whatever you think, it's always got to be about value. If it's not going to add value to you to make you be better, then, I don't see the need for it. You in Shira, for example, it would be a good or valuable thing to learn a guitar. Then you can serenade Madame at home, But you see, that's value. For you, it is value. For me, it may not be, So whether you're taking something off the grid or you're adding something new onto the grid, it's the end result for both of them is that it adds value.
Wonderful stuff. It's a shame, but we're coming to the end. In fact, we're at the end of this conversation. I never quite get enough of you. I know we didn't touch on a number of things because of time, but I'm going to give you the next 2 minutes to just sum up if there's anything that you felt was necessary to this conversation that we haven't touched on, that you may leave on the temples of the hearts of our audience.
Okay.
So they'll have a better 2019.
Okay. I guess the easiest thing to say is whether you're a business or you're an individual or an institution or whatever it is, a family, focus is all about why you are here and what you are here to do. And if you can keep your eyes on those two, it redefines or newly defines everything else. Everything else. You'll be amazed. As a business, if you know you're supposed to be selling X to customers, then it's supposed to be just X you deal with. And therefore, anything else that comes along the way that looks like Y, Z, or W, is distraction. So focus is largely about where you need to be and how you need to be there. And if you can keep your eye on those two and make sure you stick to those two, then everything else falls in line. I think it's that keeping that bigger picture in mind that makes it focus.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Marek. And for me here, my takeouts, let me read this comment. That's just come through. Didn't add a name. This is whenever you decide and make the effort to rise to the top, there's an unseen force that tries to prevent you. This force will fight against every achiever, no matter your constitution. But the key thing he says is, or she says is, just be focused. And I like that as a summary to our conversation. But for me, the takeout is that change is good. It might be uncomfortable, but it prepares you. It gives you an opportunity to do something new. The second thing is that you can consolidate and kill many birds with fewer stones. You look at things that are in the same area or similar tasks, and you group them together and execute. Free up time. Now, adaptability is critical. That you need to be able to take, roll with the punches as they come, and discipline. Be ruthless with yourself. That's the only way that you can get the rest of the world to align. Otherwise, you'll be saying yes to everything and everyone. And finally, be value driven. Yeah. Anything you do, at the core of it is, okay, is this going to give me value? Is this going to answer the why am I here question? And with that, we should be able to have a better 2019. Thank you very much, Marek, for that. And as usual, I'm going to treat you to a nice reggae song before we part ways. And for all you who tuned in, thank you so much. And we've just started. There's a lot more from where this came from. Tune in again next week. But for now, it's adios. Go forward, make rain. Shalom. My name is Inshira Ado. And up next is the news with Mr. Komla Adum. And then Drive kicks in with Lexus Bill. Be good.